Hello, this is Jayni blog. I'm going to talk about my creative process today. Previously, I was involved with all kinds of art: sketching, pottery, stained glass, garment sewing, watercolor painting, oil painting, faux marbling and decor painting, photography, writing and poetry. But today I rely on serendipity mostly. I listen to my dreams, I look at events, nature, people, I experiment, I paint, I keep on painting and trying to dare out new materials, look at workshops, continue with my photography and stitching, collaging, and playing mostly. As you can see, this is my office or my studio, and I'm painting and playing all the time. My cat is playing with me, and I'm baking bread, and I'm doing all kinds of things. Basically, I'm making a mess and keep on having fun with it until something in me says yes. For instance, here I took a photograph that I started to thread paint with metallic threads, and I love it. There is a detail shot. I drew a picture, I made a pattern, cut it out, did raw edge applique, quilted, and the bread part is a photograph that I printed in my office and incorporated. Again, just playing with paints and palettes and putting together fabrics and stitching all over photographs. The software I use is mainly Jayni Artistic Digitizer, and this is available for Mac and PC. There's lots of video tutorials and training available to use this software, and you can also use it on other machines. I also use the EQ8 on occasion for borders. I use the Cricut for applique work, and I use Procreate to try out ideas. What follows is a demonstration of how I work on Artistic Digitizer. So here we are, putting nodes into the spaces where there are no stitches, and we're using the software for that. And as I'm coloring in the nodes, or putting them in where I want them, I use sharp nodes and nodes that are bent, that can make circles, and I'm filling it in, and then when it's done and it connects, then it makes a patch that fills in with stitches, which I then color, choose a color for it, and then I go to stitch flow and correct the flow of the stitches. And as you see later on, I will even change it. So here I correct all the parts that did not work well by using the edit mode, the edit nodes, and I go back and I change all the nodes as much as I can so that I can fix it and fill it up in spaces and make it look the way I want it to look. So that is quite a tedious job, but it's important. You can also see that there's all the colors at the bottom. I choose how many colors I want to use so that it's not overwhelming. And on the right on the right, I can choose whether it should be a step or a satin stitch or a flow stitch or applique or cross stitch or stippling stitches. I can also change a lot of the internal. Here I am actually testing. I've taken all the colors and I've arranged them to stitch after each other instead of all over the place in between, like first a gray and then a white and then a blue. So now they come in sequence I deliberately do that so that it's easier for me when I do color changes. There I've changed it again. I select all the black and put them together so that they are all together, and so I do that with all the colors. And then I check again with a slow redraw in my computer to see that I like where I want it, or I change the sequence to the black first and then the blue and so on till it looks completely right to me. Then I go in and I see there's a patch of stitches that I want to make into fancy stitches, and I choose the stitches that I want that might go with this image, and I select different patterns to see if it works. And I also then have to choose the stitch flow so that it goes in the right direction, and I experiment with this until I am satisfied with that. It's quite a tedious job, but it's well worth it once you get the right pattern. In exactly the same way, I prepared a background design for this particular design or image, and I made it to be used in or stitched out in a hoop. So I digitized the whole design, the foreground and the background, and stitched it out. Here I saw an image in a museum, a display, and it really inspired me to continue my story in this watercolor printed and painted on silk wall hanging, which I painted with fabric paint, and it slowly came together with all the stitching and the painting. I took a photo in India of this man, which I digitized and stitched out on dyed cotton. And as I was working, the story unfolded for me as a theme of extreme pain that was trying to be healed. The hand-dyed fabric made a perfect background for this piece, which I've called Finding the Medicine for the Poison of the Imprisoned Pain, and I resonate with it, having suffered migraine all my life. The snake is, of course, the symbol of healing. Here I used EQ8 to design a border that I designed especially for the hoop stitching, and applied this particular hoop around a watercolor stitch out of free motion quilt of one of my watercolor paintings on silk. Another drawing I made into a hoop design and created this blanket. And this was a applique design. Applique flower border around the central window scene with a blue jay embroidered, and there you can also see the free motion quilting on the detailed view. I often do jelly printed papers, which I tear up and make into collages, and they become the background pattern for embroidered panels that I use in my jackets. Here you can see the completed jacket which I'm wearing, and it looks quite amazing. During the winter I made this blue patchwork panel which I embroidered little birds, silver birds onto, and they became another jacket. The jacket had to have a silver lining because it was a blue with silver lining. I like to use unusual fabric, and this one I used to free motion quilt around mushrooms that I digitized and embroidered on, and it became a super popular jacket that sold like hotcakes. Here I used the workshop that I attended about circles and transparency from Carolina Onto, and I used the photograph that I took of water to inspire my design specifically. And this is how I put the circles together to make, of course, another jacket. I used the EQ8 program to design a panel using the shades of gray to black, and I'm lining out and cutting out all the parts. The chain piecing then happens, then create the complete panel, which I then cut up. I have to insert the different possibilities and try out other avenues until I come up with something that really pleases me. Here the centerpiece is embroidered. Of course, I don't do just one. I have to try the black and red as well. Then I was inspired by all the wildfires, and I painted on fabric buildings that was in flame. I embroidered the skeletons and other elements, and used the leftover little pieces of the black and white and red, and designed a whole new piece. This is a reversible jacket on velvet, embroidered and quilted. And here I'm experimenting with pantograph techniques, using a photograph, the one in the center, that inspired me. It's an unfinished piece that I'm still painting and free motion quilting. I'm using fabric paint on this piece. This is a very small series of stitched and painted paper collage. And lastly, a photograph of me and my favorite granddaughter, well, my only granddaughter, of us playing in the pool. Take a leap of faith and always be blessed with creativity. Thank you for listening.